first high wind because the concept of stress was not fully understood. The physical concept of stress has been borrowed by psychologists as an aid to understanding our response to different circumstances. They use it as a measure of the effect that difficult circumstances can have on us, and whether we can cope or whether we might collapse like the medieval cathedrals. Stress is not the only conceptual tool that psychologists have borrowed from the physical sciences. An equally important one is feedback, which forms the core of our present understanding about how critical transitions arise. Feedback comes in two forms, positive and negative. Positive feedback reinforces change. Negative feedback dampens change down and restores equilibrium. Positive feedback can lead to runaway collapse. Negative feedback maintains the balance. This definition of feedback in the physical sense is different from how psychologists define the term. It is the latter usage that has found its way into everyday speech. I clarify the difference in chapters 4 to 6. Positive feedback works by reinforcing change, with the strength of the reinforcement increasing as the change increases. This means that the rate of change continuously accelerates. An apparently insignificant initial change can grow to become a catastrophically big one. A ladder that starts to tilt and fall while you're at the top, growing panic in a crowd, a run on a bank, the growth of an avalanche from tiny beginnings, the evolution of an arms race, the runaway collapse of a fragile ecosystem, the increasing violence of arguments in a deteriorating relationship. These are all examples of positive feedback. Negative feedback works by providing a restoring force that becomes stronger when change threatens to become larger. Like the governor on an engine, which gradually closes off the fuel supply as the engine speeds up. Or the way we steer a car by turning the wheel to correct any deviations from the line we want the car to take. Our bodies also use negative feedback in many ways to maintain homeostasis. The hotter we get, for example, the more we perspire, and the greater becomes the cooling effect as the perspiration evaporates. On a larger scale, it has been proposed that the balance of nature and the invisible hand of free market competition provide long-term stability by introducing negative feedback into ecosystems and economies, respectively. Unfortunately, it's a myth in both cases. Such negative feedback processes can provide temporary stability, but in the long term, our ecosystems and our economies, like our bodies, our relationships, and our societies, are all governed by a complex and constantly shifting balance of positive and negative feedback processes. Critical transitions happen when positive feedback or some other runaway process, such as a buildup of stress, takes over from the normal balancing processes of negative feedback. Our problem in predicting personal, social, economic, and natural disasters is learning how to tell when the balance is stable, on the one hand, and when we are getting dangerously close to a point of instability, on the other. When we get to such a point, intolerable stresses may provoke a sudden collapse, and runaway processes, such as positive feedback, may suddenly take over and cause the system to run out of control and fail catastrophically. The underlying processes that produce critical transitions have a lot in common, but until recently the task of predicting the imminence of a critical transition has seemed close to impossible. Sometimes it is genuinely impossible, but in the last decade, new insights and the development of increasingly powerful computers have allowed scientists to look more deeply into the question. What they have seen offers fresh hope. Out of a dizzying mess of action and reaction, deviation and correction, process and counterprocess, there has come into focus a remarkable set of universal early warning signs that tell us when situations are about to become critical and when runaway processes are about to take over.